The cry cut through the morning like a blade of ice. It wasn't a human cry or the sharp call of a gull. It was a dolphin's alarm, short, high, and filled with sudden fear, echoing across the still water. For a moment, every creature along the coastline paused. Even the ocean seemed to tighten, its rolling waves holding their breath. A small shape thrashed near the shore, flukes slapping helplessly as sand sprayed with every movement. And then, almost as quickly as it began, the sound stopped. The beach fell silent again, as if the world had just swallowed a secret. But this was only the end of the moment. And the story had started long before that. Just an hour earlier, nothing hinted at danger. Dawn stretched across the horizon like a soft, glowing blanket. The sky carried gentle lavender colors that slowly warmed into gold as the sun rose. Calm waves brushed against the coastline in a rhythm so steady it felt like the ocean was quietly humming to itself. In that soft, early light, a baby dolphin named Lyra played beside her mother in the shallows. Her skin shimmered each time she broke the surface, droplets flying in tiny rainbows around her. She spun in small circles, chasing silver darting fish that always seemed one breath faster than her. Every few seconds, she chirped and clicked, calling out in joy, showing off her newest spins and jumps like a child hoping for praise. Her mother answered with warm, gentle clicks, reminders to stay close, to stay safe, to stay within the calm water where the morning light felt almost magical. Farther out, deeper in the quiet blue, an old humpback whale watched over the scene. Solon moved with a slowness that didn't seem tired but wise. His huge body glided through the water without sound, his long pectoral fins drifting like wings. Scars crossed his back and sides, pale white marks from battles long past, but his eyes were soft, steady, and patient. He knew this coastline better than most creatures alive. He had seen storms that tore through villages, waves that swallowed whole beaches, and currents that could pull a creature down before it ever understood what was happening. To the young dolphins, he was almost a myth, the silent guardian who wandered near their pod every season, offering protection with nothing but his massive presence. Sometimes, Lyra watched him from a distance, amazed at how a creature so large could move with such quiet grace. She didn't understand him, not fully, but she felt something whenever he passed. Safety, like the sea itself stood behind him. That morning, she felt the same calm comfort. Everything around her glowed with life, the shifting patterns of sunlight brushing across the waves, the sparkling mist rising from breaking surf, the faint songs of other whales drifting in the distance. It was a morning meant for peace. But beneath the surface, something else was moving. Lyra didn't notice it at first. She was too busy chasing a stray cluster of fish that slipped toward a deeper patch of water. The fish scattered like glitter the moment she approached. She followed the trail, curious, laughing in her own dolphin way. Then she felt it, a gentle but strange pull on her fins. Not a wave, not a current she recognized, more like invisible fingers tugging from below. She tried to turn back toward her mother, but the water seemed heavier, thicker, as if it were trying to guide her somewhere. She didn't want to go. Her mother called out, a sharp, warning click. Lyra turned again, pushing harder, but the pull returned. Solon was the first to feel the shift fully. His instincts, shaped by decades of travel through changing oceans, caught the strange rhythm. The tide wasn't moving the way it usually did. It was rolling back too quickly, dragging too strongly, pulled by a distant storm no one could see from the calm shore. The undertow slid like a quiet shadow beneath the bright surface. He changed direction. Angling toward the dolphins, Lyra's mother swam swiftly to her daughter's side, nudging her away from the invisible force, guiding her into a safer patch of water. Lyra finally pulled free, startled by how strong the water had felt around her small body. For a moment, Elle returned to normal, but Solon did not slow down. He circled the area, scanning with low, rumbling calls that vibrated through the water like distant thunder. He felt it again, the pressure, the silent drag, the unnatural pulse in the sea. He knew this pattern. He had felt it once as a young whale during a storm that had nearly swept him into jagged rocks. The water warned him before the winds ever began, and now it was warning him again. Lyra stayed close to her mother after that, though the earlier playfulness still glimmered in her eyes. She didn't fully understand what had happened, only that the water had felt wrong for a moment. But when the pull faded, she relaxed again, brushing her mother's side gently in apology for drifting too far. The world looked peaceful, too peaceful. Sunlight sparkled on every wave. The breeze began to pick up, warm, soft, harmless. But small signs started to show. A cluster of fish suddenly swam in tight formation. A stingray hurried across the sandy floor, kicking up clouds of dust behind it. Even the gulls, usually noisy and restless, grew quiet as if listening to something far away. Lyra didn't notice these details. She only felt her mother's gentle presence and the comfort of shallow waters. She twisted in one last slow flip, letting her tail break the surface with a soft splash. Solon drifted closer, lifting his great head slightly above water for a breath. His blowhole released a heavy burst of mist, the sound echoing like a warning bell. The air felt different to him, thicker, holding hints of distant rain far beyond the horizon. Something was coming. He tilted his head, eyeing the coastline. A strange stillness swept across it, as if the wind had suddenly forgotten to blow. Even the endless hum of small waves seemed to fade. For the first time that morning, everything stopped. Lyra paused mid-swim, sensing the change. Her mother stiffened, clicking softly a question. A concern so listening with every part of his body. The ocean inhaled, a long, deep breath. A silence that stretched across the world. Something inside that silence felt heavy, fragile, waiting. Lyra pressed against her mother, unsure why the water suddenly felt colder. Solon slowly turned toward the open sea, toward the source of the coming danger. The calm was over. The warning had been given. The storm had begun its slow approach, and none of them could see how far its reach would soon extend. Not yet, but the ocean knew, and it was preparing them for the tragedy it was about to reveal. One moment the water was pulling back in a slow, uneasy retreat, and the next it exploded forward with the force of a charging beast. A wall of churning foam slammed into the shoreline, lifting sand, driftwood, and seaweed into the air. Lyra's mother spun instinctively, calling sharply for her calf. But the sudden violence was too fast, faster than warning, faster than fear. The surge swallowed Lyra whole. For a heartbeat, she felt weightless, tossed upward like a leaf caught in a storm wind. Then the current twisted, snatched her tiny body, and hurled her toward the beach. Her world turned into spinning water, bubbles, and blinding light. She tried to call for her mother, but the ocean roared too loudly for her small voice to rise. When the wave finally collapsed, it released Lyra onto the sand with a heavy, final thud. The water drew away again, much faster than it ever should have. Sliding back like a giant hand withdrawing into the sea, Lyra lay where it left her, half on wet sand, half in a thin puddle that shrank with every breath of wind. Her flukes twitched. Her sides rose and fell in sharp, panicked jerks. The air felt hot, too hot. Each second dried her skin a little more, tightening it like a burning rope. Her mother's cry cut through the chaos, a desperate, trembling sound that cracked at the end. She raced forward, but the retreating water was too shallow. Her body scraped the sand, forcing her to stop before she too became trapped. Still, she called, again and again, her clicking rising into a frantic scream, high above. Gulls circled, startled at first, then drawn by instinct to the struggling creature below. Their harsh cries filled the air, echoing off the cliffs as they swooped lower, wings slicing through sunlight. They were not the main threat, but their presence added to the panic, shadows flickering across Lyra's helpless body. Wings beating like warnings, Lyra tried to twist herself back toward the sea, but her body was not made for land. Every movement sent a shock of pain through her side. The sand beneath her dried quickly, turning from soft to gritty, scraping her delicate skin each time she struggled. Offshore, Solon heard everything. The baby's cry, the mother's helpless panic, the strange, unnatural silence after the wave. He turned, pushing his enormous body toward the shoreline with powerful strokes. But the water grew thinner with each movement, the sea pulling away as if afraid to touch the land again. Solon felt the change, the sand rising beneath him, scraping the underside of his great fins. A humpback whale did not belong in these shallow waters. He could trap himself with one wrong move, but he did not stop. He angled his body sideways to reduce the drag, using the last deep channel he could find as a path toward the stranded calf. Each breath he took rattled through the air in heavy bursts, mist spraying around him. Old memories stirred storms from long ago. Creatures he had tried and failed to save. Not again. He told himself in the silent language of instinct. Not this one. Lyra's mother continued calling, circling in frantic loops, searching for any gap in the tide that could bring her closer. Her voice shook. Her body trembled. She kept lowering her head toward the calf even though she could not reach her, as if her presence alone could pull Lyra back to safety. Lyra heard her. Weakly, she tried to answer. Instead, only a soft wheeze escaped, thin, strained, fading. The sun rose higher, warming the sand until the heat pushed at her skin like a second weight. She blinked slowly, trying to stay awake, trying to understand why the ocean she loved had suddenly abandoned her. Every instinct she had told her to move, to keep fighting, but her small body was tiring fast. Her breaths came shorter. Her tail lay still. Solon reached the shallows at last. The ground beneath him grew dangerously shallow. With each forward push, his stomach brushed sand. A few more meters, and he too would be trapped. A creature weighing tons, helpless on the beach beside her. But he lowered himself anyway, letting his massive head dip toward the sand where Lyra lay. He released a deep, low call, a sound that traveled through the air like a tremor, gentle but full of strength. Lyra's eyes opened weakly. She saw the shadow first, huge, dark, stretching over her like a moving cloud. Then Solon's giant head rose above the waterline. Drops rolled off his skin, falling around her like heavy rain. He did not touch her. Humpback whales rarely touched anything on land, but he lowered his jaw close enough that she could feel the faint vibration of his call. It steadied her for a moment, just enough to take another breath. Behind them, the ocean continued to slide away, dragging itself deeper and deeper from shore. Without the water, Solon could go no further. He was inches from danger, standing at the last boundary where a whale could survive. Lyra's mother still called, her cries trembling with exhaustion. Lyra no longer answered. She lay very still, sides rising only with small, uneven gasps. Her tail no longer moved. The thin film of water beneath her had evaporated, leaving her entire weight pressed into the hot sand. A gull swooped too close. Lyra flinched instinctively. The movement drained what little strength she had left. She blinked slowly. Her breaths grew softer. The world dimmed at the edges. Solon watched. Unable to look away, his massive shadow stretched over her tiny body as if trying to shield her from the sun. His fin twitched helplessly in the shallow water. His instincts screamed at him to retreat, to protect himself before the tide dropped entirely. But he did not move. He stayed. The sun climbed higher. The coastline quieted. Even the gulls paused, sensing something fragile in the stillness. Lyra's mother gave one last trembling call. Softer, almost broken. Lyra didn't answer. Solon lowered his head again, releasing a deep, rumbling note, not a call for help. Not a warning, but something older, sadder. Carried from a lifetime of storms and losses, time was running out. The tide had abandoned them. The sand clung to Lyra's skin like dust on fading light. The ocean waited, silent and distant. Solon's shadow fell across her small body as she lay motionless on the beach. A single newborn dolphin against the vast, uncaring shore. And the chapter ended there, in the haunting stillness of a world holding its breath, As the ocean prepared for what would come next, the tide had vanished completely, leaving a stretch of glistening, wet sand that reflected the harsh sun like a mirror. Lyra lay there, motionless at first, her small body pressed into the coarse grains, flukes trembling faintly. Her eyes opened once, slowly, and then closed again. She tried to lift herself, but every movement dragged her down, hot sand sticking to her slick skin. The ocean had retreated so far that even her mother could not reach her. Waves lapped weakly at the edges. But the full rhythm of the sea, the pulse she had known all her life, was gone. Solon felt the urgency deep in his bones before he even reached the shallows. He pushed forward with all the power left in his massive body, fins scraping against hidden sandbars. Each movement was a gamble too far, and he could become trapped alongside her. But instinct, that old, tireless force, carried him onward. He remembered storms he had faced in his youth, whales lost to sand and tide, the silent grief of the sea itself when life was swept away. He would not let this happen again. Not to Lyra. He paused for a moment, lifting his head just enough to exhale a thick cloud of mist. It scattered in the sunlight, sparkling like tiny diamonds, and for a heartbeat, everything seemed suspended, the gulls above, the shimmering waves beyond, the dry baking sand around the helpless dolphin. Then he acted. Slowly, deliberately, he shifted his enormous body sideways, pressing his weight against the water in a maneuver no whale had tried in decades. The current responded, faint at first, then stronger. A small ripple grew into a shallow surge, washing over the sand in tiny waves. Lyra's mother reacted immediately, nudging her daughter gently. The baby flinched at first, unsure what was happening. The first wave lapped around her flukes and belly, a reminder of the life she almost lost. She felt the pull of the returning sea, tentative at first, but it was enough. Enough to give her hope, just enough to remind her that she belonged in the water. She twitched, lifting her head and flippers in small, cautious motions. Solon continued, calling low and deep, a sound that reverberated through the water and sand, vibrating through Lyra's bones, reminding her that she was not alone. Each exhale of his lungs, each movement of his titanic body, pushed more water into the channel he was forming. The ripple became a wave, a tiny river connecting the stranded calf to the waiting ocean. Sweat, if a whale could sweat, poured through him in exhaustion, but his focus never wavered. The channel had to hold. She had to make it. Other dolphins arrived, drawn by instinct and by the cries of the mother. They swam in tight formation around Lyra, nudging her gently, synchronizing their movements with the shallow waves Solon created. Each contact, each brush of flukes against her sides gave her courage, told her she could move. She pressed against them, testing her strength, then lifted her body enough to let the water carry her slightly further. The channel was growing. Every push of the returning tide lifted her, small increments at first, each one a triumph against despair. The sun climbed higher, and heat pressed against the sand and the water. Solon's strength waned. His body, immense and powerful, heaved in the shallow water, muscles quivering under the strain of being too close to shore. His eye flicked toward Lyra. She was moving, trembling and uncertain, but moving. That alone kept him going. One more push, one more wave, one more breath. The sea was his ally, but he had to guide it, direct it with patience, with wisdom, with sacrifice. Then, the smallest moment, a surge of water, just enough for Lyra to slip her flukes beneath her. She slid forward with the current, her body trembling, flippers paddling weakly but purposefully. Her mother clicked softly, encouraging, guiding, pushing her daughter toward safety. Lyra pressed her nose against the water's surface, feeling the familiar weight of the ocean again. She wobbled, almost lost her balance on the shallow sand, but a tiny nudge from the other dolphins kept her upright. Step by step, inch by inch, she returned to her true home. Solon lowered his head one final time, letting the water pulse around him and join the flow. Lyra's flippers touched deeper water. She pressed herself forward, propelled by instinct, by survival, by the quiet guidance of the great whale. Her mother swam alongside, nudging her gently, clicks soft and warm. Lyra's small body trembled, exhausted but alive. The channel held, the ocean returned to her. The threat of the sand and sun faded. Finally, Lyra pressed her head gently against Solon's side. The whale's massive form loomed above her for a moment, a shadow of protection and sacrifice. He exhaled slowly, the mist curling into the air and catching the sun. There was no sound, no applause, only the deep vibration of life carried through the water. Lyra's mother circled, nudging her calf, clicking softly in relief. The other dolphins moved away, leaving mother and child alone with the enormous, fading guardian. Solon did not linger. His strength was gone, drained by the effort, yet his presence lingered in the pulse of the channel, in the rhythm of returning waves. Slowly, he drifted back into deeper water, each stroke steady but labored. His eye flicked back once, a silent acknowledgement of the life he had preserved. Then he disappeared beneath the surface, leaving only ripples to mark his passage. Lyra pressed her small body against her mother again. Trembling with relief, feeling the warmth of the water, feeling that she had survived, the ocean exhaled in unison. Waves rolling gently now, the rhythm of life restored. The sun shone brightly, reflecting on the backs of mother and calf as they swam slowly, almost reverently, through the shallow channel. Sand crumbled beneath small, returning waves. Owls resumed their lazy flights above, and the heat softened into a gentle warmth. Nature, once cruel and indifferent, had given mercy. A single act of sacrifice had turned despair into hope. Solon's presence, though gone from sight, lingered in memory. The calf would not remember the size of the whale, only the weight of the care, the pulse of protection. The deep hum of an instinct that reached across species, across danger. In that moment, the ocean felt alive in a new way, a sacred space where trust, courage, and love existed alongside instinct. Lyra nudged her mother once more, circling her side, and clicked softly, a sound full of recognition and awe. She had survived. The mother dolphin responded in kind, their bond stronger for the trial. Slowly, the camera of memory or imagination might zoom out. The coastline stretched endlessly, the sand wet and sparkling under the sun. The tide returned fully, washing over the channel, erasing the marks of struggle. Above, the gulls wheeled in lazy circles. The wind carried the faint scent of salt and wet fish, and the horizon glimmered with the vast, unknowable promise of the sea. Solon had gone, but his sacrifice remained. Woven into the rhythm of the waves, into the quiet trust of a mother and her calf, into the story of survival against impossible odds, and the ocean, endless and timeless, seemed to pause for a moment, a silent reflection of life, death, and the acts of courage that shaped it. A world ruled by instinct had shown that even in its harshest moments, compassion could ripple outward, leaving traces of hope in the hearts of those who lived to see another day. Lyra and her mother swam together, their forms cutting through the water in soft, measured movements. The waves carried them, steady, gentle, safe. The crisis was over. The lesson lingered. Even in a world ruled by nature's wild rhythms, acts of sacrifice, quiet, heroic, enduring, shaped the legends of the sea. And so the ocean exhaled, calm once more.